As Western students, you probably hear the word imperialism, and you might have mixed feelings about it. You might think about the times when the United States was a colony of Great Britain, but you probably don't have the visceral, negative reaction that many people in the world who are non-Western, non-Christian have towards imperialism. And remember, folks, China was absolutely shut down to imperialism. The door was closed, which really upset people in Europe, people in North America, because of that massive China market. And one more thing I want you to consider as a Western student, picture this in your mind's eye. Picture this. Imagine that a foreign power occupied the United States and imposed their culture, their religion, and their language upon you. How would you feel? Without question, one of the biggest challenges that the United States of America faces today is the opioid crisis, particularly in states like Ohio, where there's been a lot of economic dislocation. Now, I want you to keep that in mind, the opioid crisis, the heroin crisis that we have here in this region, as I talk about this next portion. The British did something really dastardly to China in the 18th and 19th century. It's something that the British should be embarrassed about. Western civilization should be embarrassed about what took place. They needed to crack the China market, somehow get into China, because remember, the Chinese were not open to their products, and they were funneling all trade through the port of Canton. So the British took a product from India, which is opium, which is highly addictive, and started to smuggle it into China. And what happened was it created this massive demand for this highly addictive narcotic. It ruined people's lives, and it made the British incredibly rich. Again, this whole issue about the British drug trade in China really reminds me a lot of contemporary American debates, because the Qing dynasty was really concerned about this phenomenon. I mean, justifiably. And there was the debate in the Qing dynasty, should we just legalize it and tax it, or should we stamp it out? And so they came to the conclusion that this was evil and it needed to be stamped out. So they're going to appeal to the British to say, look, what you're doing is totally immoral. It's totally wrong. You wouldn't do this to your own citizens. And the British just blew them off, man. Just totally blew them off. As a matter of fact, they declared war. The Opium War that was a result of this dispute between China and Britain was a dark period in world history. You had a country with highly advanced industrial revolution, produced weapons, the British, taking on a country that had not embraced the Industrial Revolution. It was a slaughter. It was a slaughter on the sea. It was a slaughter on the land. And what the British did is they worked their way up the coast from Canton and then inland at Shanghai to a city that the Chinese called Nanking. The British referred to this city as Nanking. As soon as this city fell, the Qing dynasty surrendered. The Treaty of Nanking was signed in 1842. If you thought the Treaty of Versailles in 1919 humiliated Germany, wait till you see the provisions of the Treaty of Nanking. They are epically abusive. First of all, ended the Canton system. From now on, the entire coast of China is open to trade. Now, what this did was it elevated the city of Shanghai, which is going to become the most important trading city in China, and today it's one of the most important trading cities in the world. It's the mouth of the Yangtze River, very similar to New Orleans here in this country. The Chinese had to give the British the island of Hong Kong, and this remained a British colony all the way up to 1997. The Chinese had to assume war guilt. They had to pay reparations to the British, like they were even remotely responsible for this war. Britain got from China the designation Most Favored Nation status. Most favored nation status means that any concession that China gives to any nation would have to automatically be extended to Great Britain. And this is the one that just blows me away. In 1860, 20 years later, Britain was able to secure from China the legal right to sell opium. The Opium War also opened China up to Christian missionaries. This was perhaps the greatest humiliation, having foreigners come in and undermine your culture. Now, when you think of missionaries, Christian missionaries, you might think of something favorable. And it's important to note that these Christian missionaries did many positive things for Chinese people. They set up schools, they set up hospitals, they educated people. However, China could not get over the humiliating nature of having its culture undermined. The upshot of the Opium War is that China as a nation almost stopped existing. The European nations rushed in and started to carve out areas, zones of occupation in the port cities of China. What's incredible about these zones of occupation is they were like mini colonies. And if you were a Chinese national and you walked in to one of these zones of occupation, you were subjected to horrible civil rights abuses and humiliation. So China is going to, this whole episode, China's experience with imperialism is going to create tremendous anger that's still evident in China today.